Hello, this is Mama Maria coming to you from my kitchen again. It's a beautiful day. At least I have a nice view to look at while I'm cooking. It's a gorgeous day outside for a change. I believe it's Sunday not sure what day of quarantine it is. But anyway, today we're going to be making some stuffed peppers with rice and lentils. Now, I like to choose the dried lentils. I already had some in a package, that's why this is sealed. I like to choose dried lentils, and I like to soak them for about an hour in hot but not boiling water before cooking. Expedites the cooking a little bit. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with lentils, they are an excellent source of fiber, iron. It has 50% iron, 100% fibers, and 20% of protein. So this is like a plant-based protein, which is very, very healthy, and not to mention very delicious too. So there's no meat in this at all, so it's totally vegetarian. I will be adding some Parmesan cheese as well as some mozzarella. Now you may or may not add breadcrumbs. That's your preference. If you want to keep it gluten-free, you certainly can by not adding any breadcrumbs. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put the lentils to cook, because they'll take about half an hour-ish, 45 minutes, thereabouts. I did soak them in hot water, so they may take a little bit less time. But with these things, they're organic. You never really know. So the best thing to do is to taste them. Now, to put them to soak, what I did first, I rinsed them off because they can be a bit dusty. You know, they're packaged. So I don't know. I like to rinse them off first, as has been my habit since a child. My parents always used to make these kind of things, and they always rinse them. Then you soak them in the water, the clean water, and you put them to cook right in that clean water, because that's where most of the nutrients will be. So I didn't add salt to this water. I wouldn't add salt to the hot water. If it was a cold water bath, then I would add salt. So now I'm going to just put them to boil, and now I will add some salt as they start to cook. Okay, so now I'm going to turn on the stove. I'm going to turn it on high at first, and then I'm going to add the salt. Now, as you know, I don't measure very much. It's like I'm going to add that much. And then once they start to cook, or once they are cooked, I will taste and adjust the salt if necessary. So now I'm giving them a stir. Now keep your eye on that. If you put it on very high, you'll have to keep your eye on it, because it will boil over if you don't. Now I'll just let this cook for a little bit. In the meantime, I'm going to get my sauce going. So the sauce, it can be already pre-made. If you have some in the fridge already that you've made a nice big batch. The rice as well, it can be leftover risotto, a great way to use that up, or leftover just rice pilaf. It doesn't really matter, as long as it's rice and lentils. So let's get cooking this. And the sauce, I already have a video on that. Feel free to look at it and follow those directions. It really is delicious and very easy. Now the lentils are cooking. They're starting to come to a boil. Stir them periodically. You don't want them to stick to the bottom of the pot. And that's as much effort as you're going to have to put into cooking these, because once they start to boil, you don't have to worry about them anymore. Now you'll notice that I have another pot here. This is for the rice. I'm going to cook, I don't have any leftover rice, so I'm just going to cook a little bit, just enough for the peppers. So they're almost boiling. Just another quick stir. The water for the rice is boiling. Now some people say you shouldn't cook rice just in water like pasta, whatever. I just cook it in water with salt. I let it come to a boil, and then I turn the heat down so it simmers. And then whatever water is left over, I will drain it. So it's not a complicated cooking process. Don't make it any more complicated than it needs to be. There we go. So now these, I'm using the same spoon, no worries. Okay, so now everything is going to get turned down, and they're just going to cook, hang out. Now it doesn't matter that their cooking times are different because they have to be put together when they're slightly cooled anyway, so that's not a concern. So see how they're bubbling nicely? That's what you want. Okay, so it's been about half an hour, more or less. Everything seems to be cooking beautifully. Here I have the lentils. They are pretty much done. I'm going to have to taste them to see for sure. And the rice is cooking as well. So there's the rice here. And the rice is done. I tasted it already. It's done and it has enough salt. So that I'm going to actually take out and just, I'm going to drain and let cool. And same with these once I taste them to see how they are. Now in the background you'll see that there's some homemade bread. I got ambitious last night and made a bit of bread. So we're going to enjoy that with our stuffed peppers today. Okay, so now let's see. Perfect. Right amount of salt too. I will add a little touch more once I put them all together. So these I'm just going to take off the stove and let them cool down. So turn that off. And turn that off. And I have sauce that I had made earlier this week that I'm heating up. So you don't have to do everything right away. You can just do it over a period of time and use them from different meals and leftovers, and you've got a completely new meal. So now this is the rice over here. Now I'm going to save some water, and the peppers, okay, that are here, I like to cut them in half, clean them out, and then blanch them. By blanching them, I find that they're easier to digest. So this water is already hot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the water or the rice out with a slotted spoon. And where is my slotted spoon? There it is. So you see how the rice grows? It's usually 3 to 1. 1 cup of rice will make 3 cups of, 1 cup of raw rice will make about 3 cups of cooked rice. Now this is quite cooked. It's not al dente. It's quite cooked because I want to be able to mix it together and to make it stick together with the lentils. So you see, I have a nice plate of rice. I'm going to let that cool down a bit. Just a little bit of extra water in there, so I'm going to drain it. I'm going to put that aside. I'm going to uncover the lentils so they can cool down a little bit more. And then I'm going to clean up my peppers right here. I'm going to show you how to clean those up, cut them, and blanch them. All right. Now, the peppers, I'm going to cut them in half this way. You could, like, if you want to have, if you have a small pan or whatever, you could actually just cut off this part and leave the whole pepper. But I don't want quite that many, so I'm just going to cut them in half this way. So that's an alternative. And then I'm going to take this part out, clean it up, and set it aside. Same thing with this half. Okay, so I opted to change the water rather than keep that same one from the rice, but you can. There's no reason why you can't. So I've got the water here. It's going to boil as soon as I turn it on. I guess that would help, wouldn't it? So it's going to boil, and I'm going to salt it and then blanch the peppers. In the meantime, I can remove the lentils also with a slotted spoon, so they will cool down a little bit faster. So this was, I think, it was about a cup to a cup and a quarter of raw lentils. And again, like rice, like most legumes, they expand when they're rehydrated. Now I could technically drain them in a strainer, but this is the way I've always done it, just with a slotted spoon. And this way I know that if there's anything at the bottom of the pot, like whatever, a little bit of dust or whatever, it'll stay there, although they have been washed. I am going to reserve the liquid. That's why I didn't drain it. I am going to reserve the liquid in case there's it's too many lentils and I want to keep some. You should store them in its own liquid. So that's the other reason why I like to take them out with a slotted spoon. So we'll just let them hang out here and cool down. The rice is cooling down, just like that. It's all good. Okay, water's boiling. I haven't added any salt to it, so I'm going to add a bit of salt to it. I'm going to have some, want to blanch these in salted water. So there's a bit of salt. Now I'm going to drop them in a couple of pieces at a time. So let's do them in 2 batches. I'll do 3 pieces at once. Let them blanch a bit. I don't have to blanch very long, just a couple of minutes, just enough to soften them up. And it does make it easier. It expedites the cooking, first of all, and it does make it slightly easier to digest, because otherwise the peppers, they come back to haunt. At least they do to me anyway. Okay, they're ready to come out. So they're still firm, and they will continue to cook because of the heat. They will continue to cook even on the plate. Now we put the others in and do the same thing. Okay, the peppers are blanched, and you see they're nice and soft. They're very pliable, even though they were blanched just for maybe 3-4 minutes. Doesn't take very long. So now I have the lentils and I have the rice, and I think that that's going to be too much lentils, or too many lentils for this many peppers. The rice might be a little much as well, and it was only like a cup of rice and a cup of lentils, just so you know. So I'm going to be using this bowl here to do the mixture. So I'm just going to take and put some of the lentils back in the pot. As I said before, I reserve the liquid just in case they seem to be too much. So here it looks like I have a couple of cups of lentils, and I'm going to add same amount of rice. well, I may as well add the whole thing, because these afterwards are really good also done as fritters. So here I have rice, lentils. I like to have a 50-50 ratio. So here we go. I'm just going to put a few of these back. Like a 50-50 ratio of rice and lentils. There. And now I'm going to get a fork just to mix them a bit together, just to see where I stand. Yeah, that looks good. So you see how that is a nice blend, 50-50 lentils and rice. Now to this I'm going to add my herbs. So right here I've chopped up a couple of cloves of garlic, a few leaves of basil, parsley, and just like a little sliver of onion, very finely chopped. Now these have all been salted, so I'm not going to add any salt because they're tasted fine. I'm just going to add a bit of pepper. Okay. And to this, let me grab a measuring cup so we can see exactly what I put in. So I'm going to add that's about 3/4 of a cup of Parmesan cheese. I am going to add a few breadcrumbs. Not a lot, maybe just half a cup. And I have some shredded mozzarella. This is mozzarella and Edam, but mozzarella, just mozzarella on its own is fine. So I'm just going to add, you know, another 3/4 of a cup of that. Now I'm going to mix them together so they can all blend nicely. And then I'm going to add in an egg or two, depending on how dry they are. Because the egg you want to use for binding. It's not to moisten them, it's to bind them. Okay, so let me see. Now I'm going to add 2 eggs. Okay, I'll just use this plate here with the rice that was from the rice. No sense in dirtying more dishes than necessary. There's 1. And there's 2. And now I'm going to beat them. And I'm going to mix them in. Now the rice and lentils are cool, because if you put the egg in a hot mixture, let's put it that way, then it's going to cook the egg and it won't work as a binding. So now I'm just going to get my hands right in there. The best way to do it. There we go. Again, if it was hot, you wouldn't be able to mix it with your hands, and that's the only way you're going to really feel the texture. So it's kind of like the meatball mixture. It's kind of moist, but will stick together. Alright, so now I've got the sauce here. I'm going to put some sauce in the bottom of the casserole dish that I'm using. That helps with the cooking process, and then I'll put some sauce on top as well. So there's a bit of sauce there. And I'm going to actually use a spoon. Now these have been salted already, the peppers. The water was salted when I cooked them. So I don't need to salt them again. If you've forgotten, then you can salt them now, by all means. Okay, and then they go in whichever way they fit. So I've got a orange, a yellow. Stuff them good. As my husband would say, no be cheap with the stuffing. Now I had restaurants, as I have said previously, and when we opened up our Italian food restaurant, I was the one who made up the menu. And I decided at that time, that was in 1992 that we bought it, and I decided at that time that we should have some vegetarian meals on the menu. So I added pasta primavera, chickpeas and pasta, you know, pasta fagioli, all these plant proteins. And it was funny because everybody laughed at me. They thought I was crazy. They said, no, 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 you'll never sell any of those dishes. Well, I was vindicated, because the very first order that we received in the restaurant was for chickpeas and pasta. I said, see, I do know what I'm talking about after all. So they're being placed nice in the pot, in the casserole dish. The oven is on at 350. And there we have it. Squish them in there, and that way they stay nice and together. See, when they're soft, you can squish them in and they won't break. There we go. Yeah, I have a little bit left over, but that's fine. It tastes really, really good regardless. You can use it for other things as well. Yeah, perfect. I'm going to, I think I have another pepper. I'm going to stuff it and put it in a smaller bowl. I made a lot of sauce because I had made some manicotti, homemade manicotti with ricotta, which turned out really delicious, and I made the pasta and everything. Oven's ready. Give them a shake. Perfect. And now I'm going to put some cheese on them. And then when they're halfway cooked, I will put mozzarella on them as well. But I don't want to put it now, because then what happens is it gets too brown during the cooking process. So they get covered and they go to bake. And these will take about 45 minutes, thereabouts, because they have to cook all the way through. Okay, so here we go. In the oven they go. Voila. See you in about 45 minutes. Yeah, I've taken the peppers out of the oven to check on them. The water is evaporating nicely. Now I'm going to put the mozzarella on there, just to give it just an extra layer of oomph. And they're bubbling nicely. I took the lid off so that any excess water will evaporate. Now I'm going to put these back in the oven with the lid still off, just so that we get rid of any excess water, any excess moisture. Now, if you're wondering what I'm doing in this pot, to round out the meal, I'm going to do some baby bok choy, just blanched with a bit of oil. Now we're going to go back in the oven. Perfect. Now, as I said, I'm doing some baby bok choy blanched in salted water. Not the usual way you would do bok choy, because you think bok choy more for stir fries, but I find that it's just so light when it's blanched with just a bit of olive oil. It's very refreshing to the stomach, to the intestines. I just really like it that way. I mean, I've always marched to the beat of my own drummer, so why stop now? The water's almost boiling. I'm just going to salt it And as you know, I don't really measure, so that looks about right. Dump that in. And it's kosher salt that I use. I really like it. So let that come to a rolling boil. Find a wooden spoon. And then drop them in as soon as it boils. So yeah, this is going to be a really nice meal. I'm going to round it out. Again, I have some homemade bread. So while the oven is on, I'm going to just put it in the oven to heat up and get a crispy exterior. So that's going to go in the oven right now. And let me tell you, that with some of Papa Rocco's hooch, and we're good. We're good for the day after that. So here we go. I'm just going to blanch them. Whoops. Some of them just don't want to go in there. And it doesn't take very long, just a couple of minutes, because then they do continue to cook as they're out of the water. So I'm going to blanch them a bit, drain them, and then put them in a cold water bath, or run cold running water on them to cool down and to help stop some of the cooking process. Otherwise they'll go too mushy. All right, so the peppers are ready. So I've put my bok choy on the plate, the homemade bread that's been heated up and cut. It's so crusty and smells wonderful. Now I'm going to take a pepper out. And you have a meal fit for a king. Let's clean this up here. Doesn't that look delicious? Here's a bit of EVOO. Voila.